Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Beth Quarles, an April board member and a facilitator of the call today. Thank you for joining us for our virtual pre-conference session 3. This is a part 3 series. We hope you have enjoyed all 3 sessions today. Please know that any session that is missed, the recording will be added to the conference website, so please check back. Session 3. Thank you for joining us for session 3. Wrapping up, taking home, and peer sharing. I want to mention a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, when you scroll over the screen, a menu bar pops up. Depending on what device you are on, you can find that menu bar at the top or at the bottom of the screen. That is where you will find the closed captioning for today's session. You can view the captioning by selecting the CC tab on the menu bar. For sign language interpreting, you can find the interpreters on the screen. If you would like to change the size of the screen, if slides are shown, you can select the line in the middle to make the slide or the interpreter larger or smaller. For Spanish interpretation, please click on the interpretation button in your menu bar. Find the global icon. You can then select on Spanish. If you want to hear only Spanish, select on and mute original audio. If you have technical issues, please use the chat feature. You can find the word bubble in the menu bar. If you would like to turn the chat feature off, if you are using a screen reader, you can do that by pressing Alt-H, like the letter H, as in hat. For questions and answer time, please note the correct question and answer box is on the menu bar. Please only submit questions there, as they may get lost in the chat. To ask a question or to make comment, you can also select the hand option on the menu bar. That allows us to know you have a question. For those of you on the phone today or using keystrokes, we ask that you press *9 or Alt+Y as in year on your keypad to raise your hand. We will then let you know when you can unmute. You can select the unmute option or Alt+A as in apple if using the keystrokes. Remember, if you join into the conversation, please keep all background noise down much as possible to allow us to hear you clearly. I would like to turn it over to Linda Plug and Kyle Kais. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
Appreciate the introduction. This is Linda, and I hope that, welcome everybody who's here. I hope that we have some of our great contributors from session 1 about peer support and session 2 about volunteer programs and recruitment at this our wrap-up session. Really enjoyed all the comments and questions you have so far. So I hope that you're here to join us and share again. I work at the Center for Independent Living that serves Metro Atlanta. It's called Disability Link. Actually, I've retired from full-time work and I just do some very part-time now. Lovely stuff like this, sharing time with you and my April friends. Thank you.
And my name is Kyle Kleist. I am the Executive Director at the Center for Independent Living for Western Wisconsin. We serve 10 counties in Western Wisconsin. Our main office is in Menominee. We're located about an hour straight east of Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Well, I'm happy to be here with Kyle, and we are interested in hearing from you further. So we have a few questions with regards to peer support, the topic of our first session earlier today. But we are happy to discuss any aspect of peer support that we didn't quite complete in our earlier conversation, or you felt you had something else to say. We would like to hear from you very much. As we say, we're calling this our wrapping up, taking home, and peer sharing. You've done some great peer sharing already, but we'd love you to do some more if you're up for it.
Yeah. So the first question Linda and I wanted to ask people is, what makes peer support worthwhile? And, you know, I loved a lot of the comments earlier about lived experience, because for me personally, that is what peer support, what makes peer support worthwhile. I mean, I had a mentor 30 days in rehab following my spinal cord injury over 30 years ago. And it was a gentleman who had been in a wheelchair for 20 years already. And so I always considered it paying it forward, so to speak. But like I was talking about earlier, I was recruited. One of my first things is to be a peer mentor in independent living. And I've had the opportunity to do that a number of times. And you know, I had the opportunity when I was peer support coordinator to recruit other persons with disabilities with great lived experience that they were able to share with other persons. And just the opportunity, I mean, especially around advocacy and other things, as Linda had talked about earlier, you know, a lot of the great advocacy work and stuff that we've done is really kind of has come around about peer support and other things. So what do other people think? What makes peer support worthwhile? Free field it, or feel free to chime in. Sorry, it's been a long day.
I have a comment from Jake Morris. It's lets consumer feel heard and understood.
Oh,
right,
wonderful
Jake.
comment.
A good start, yes.
Yes,
All of us want to be heard.
yes.
And sometimes in the disability community, we've not been allowed to be heard, have we? So we have to make sure we give that opportunity.
And definitely a way of connecting people. We've talked about that so much, especially in rural areas. I love the way that so many of the rural IL centers have chimed in today and talked about how connecting people in rural areas can be difficult, but how much the using technologies brought people together.
And for me, a couple of things that I think about when I think about peer support being worthwhile, I'd say it's most incredibly worthwhile because we know it's a very powerful tool. It's obviously a core service for those of us at Centers for Independent Living, but I like to think of it as a tool towards the other goals that people have, maybe not so much an end in itself.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like to talk about in the peer support training that I facilitate is that what you can expect from a peer who has lived experience is much more likely to be empathy rather than sympathy. And empathy is a much more empowering experience than sympathy. So that alone, to me, makes peer support programs worthwhile. I mean, we do peer support all over the place in Centers for Independent Living, don't we? I mean, we're actually peer supporting each other right now, centers to centers, individuals to individuals. We do informal peer support where we just might share some information and resources to somebody that we happen to be talking to. Excuse me. Or we might have more. I'm going to have to take a drink. Sorry.
No.
Sorry. Stop talking here.
No, not a problem. But yeah, I mean, Linda, you make a great point because I was talking earlier about, you know, that I have a staff that is doing an adaptive gaming event. And a lot of that is peer support too, bringing people with disabilities together It may be around just playing World of Warcraft, but it's still peer support. So it really is an opportunity for individuals with disabilities, and a lot of times cross disabilities, to get together and engage with one another.
Yeah, that makes for more understanding within our disability community, so that we can be more supportive of one another and more powerful as a group of people as we advocate for our needs. Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, we have informal and formal peer support. We have programs, we have peer-to-peer programs that April is so good at facilitating. So peer support is all over the place.
Yeah.
But I would say, where else can you get peer support? There's not very many places in the world that peer support is emphasized as it is in independent living. But, you know, obviously we know about all kinds of recovery groups that use peer support methods, but it's not everywhere in the world. Most of the world, I feel, wants to tell people what to do, not listen to what they're thinking about.
Wonderful point. I love it that earlier somebody had brought back to, not only is it a core service, but why is it a core service?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it became one of our core services because peer support is so fundamental in allowing individuals with disabilities with lived experience to connect and share that experience. So I love this next question. This was one of Linda's too, because what is the largest barrier to have the peer support program of your dreams? So think big. If you were, I mean, folks, if you were to have the peer support program of your dreams, so let's say you have unlimited funding, or maybe unlimited funding is the barrier. So what do you think is the largest barriers out there right now to really having some great peer support programs? We'd love to hear from people. I know it's been a long day and a late afternoon.
For some people, it's late afternoon. For some of you, it's quite early in the day. So we're expecting more energy from you.
So please raise your hand and feel free to speak up or put comments in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
We had a person to raise their hand, but I did not see where the hand was raised from.
Oh, that would be Renata. Go ahead, Renata.
Thanks, Abby. So I think I feel that it's two answers, or I have
Okay.
two answers. I would say one being funding, and then for me, I think the other part is just securing the volunteers, because it's so hard right now. Like, some volunteers are gung-ho and ready to go, and then you have some that are still a little apprehensive. And again, I think due to COVID and other things, and now you have the whole monkeypox situation going on. So I think, especially for the senior volunteers that that you may acquire, it's still a little difficult for some of them. They're still a little apprehensive. So those would be the two biggest things I think that would be barriers that I think of. Me personally, I love the whole peer aspect person. Like, I'm the volunteer, you know, I volunteer outside of work. Like, just, that's my whole, you know, hobby life, I guess. And so I love it. And it just, you know, when we were going through COVID and that, it just, that was one group, that was one of the services and groups that I really was worried about, just because I know that for some of these individuals, it's the only outlet they have. You know, it's the only time that they have to really interact with their peers and really be heard about things and just get their frustrations out sometimes, because sometimes that, you know, that happens too. And that's another one of those things that can be said amongst your peers, but maybe not around your family or close friends so much.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
we
for
have,
that.
I'm sorry. We have Jake Morris and Bob Creighton. They
Okay.
both agree that it is funding.
Yeah.
And then also, we have one, Jake also says our biggest barrier would be that counting myself, my seal has 4 employees, though we are currently looking to hire an IL specialist. Another comment was from Joel. Education, understanding in a rural area of what peer support is all about. And then youth, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
Youth leading to everyone, it's funding and human resources. And then Jordan Hayes, staff time is a barrier with our smaller SEALs and our small team is being pulled to other core services and in more demand. And that's,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, Linda, that was gonna go to my next comment was staff time. Having the staff time to devote to peer support a lot of times takes a back seat when you're doing a lot of IL skills training, when you're doing a lot of, some SILs are doing some advocacy work and other things. So yes, a lot of times it does. It's hard to dedicate that staff time. And especially with the smaller SILs. I mean, we have some in Wisconsin with smaller skills and, you know, you have 5, 6 IL staff that's, and everybody's busy. It's hard to fit in, and the pandemic didn't help. I mean, it was, for our center, it was great getting the CARES Act funding, but it was a lot of extra work that went on to our IL staff as well. I mean, getting out there and meeting the needs of people who needed that CARES Act funding during the pandemic. So yeah, staff time and resources and funding goes a long way. So my advice there is, boy, let's advocate like hell when it comes to the Senate version of WIOA and get that increase for independent living higher than what the $140 million was in the House version. So let's go for 250 million, which is I think, and then maybe they'll meet in the middle. But yeah, I mean, on top of so many independent living centers, you know, not getting the extra funding for our 5th core service, you know, of transition, we're still struggling with providing that core service of peer support.
Yeah, it's been my experience with especially with smaller and medium-sized centers for independent living, that it is sometimes difficult to get together the resources that are required up front for programs that can be as worthwhile as volunteers or peer programs. They do take time and effort up front before they start running, making sure you've got the everything sorted out. And that can be quite a challenge when you're already pulled, as you say, in many different directions. And some just seem more immediate than others. And when we're living through a pandemic and we know we need to respond to people in that way. So yeah, it's a challenge, no doubt about it.
we have 2 more comments.
Okay, great.
Oh, please, yes.
Youth leading, lack of technology to clone myself. And then Jamie Whitefield, the rural aspect is the second barrier. Our center covers 7 counties in a mountainous area of the state. Transportation county to county is limited, a lot of elderly population.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. We have one center here in Wisconsin that, believe it or not, covers 17 counties. Most of them predominantly rural. But you bring up, I'm surprised so many people, one of the takeaways from today I've heard is the difficulty when it comes to youth, of recruiting youth in programs. Is that something you've heard today, Linda?
Oh, yes, for lots of reasons, clearly, but we want to to support our youth. They are our future after all, but youth tend to have some other things going on like school and college and so on that takes up a lot of time and energy. To me though, one of the biggest barriers to peer support is that people don't know what it is. They've not experienced it before. So it's my experience that our consumers don't necessarily phone up to say, I would like peer support. They don't ask for that because they don't know what it is. And our volunteers don't say, I would like to be a peer supporter, at least not in those terms, because those are not words that are used that much in the world that's not IL. So I think that is a challenge for people. And it's our challenge then to receive those requests and develop it into the program that we want, whether it be a volunteer program or the peer support program or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had been on a ILU webinar earlier with Paula McElvey, and we were talking about centers doing reviews. And there's nothing really in the regulations around peer support. So that's why a lot of centers do peer support differently and track it differently. So, and I'm not calling for more regulation. Gosh, no. I love the fact that so many centers and what we've heard today do some really unique things and unique ways of providing peer support. Many have gone to doing a lot of group stuff using Zoom and other platforms. I mean, it's just great to hear that it's being done and that people are focusing on it, just as our center is trying to re-engage when it comes to peer support, or as we're calling peer partnership.
We have another comment. Brent, creativity is the big positive in the rural area, and we are only limited by our imagination. The second one is from Maria. We cover 6 counties and 5 of them are rural. Transportation and cell and Wi-Fi services to be able to join Zoom activities. And they end. Okay, we
Yep.
cover. Okay. Oh, and this is from Karen. I incorporate peer support in my IL and transition classes. Fortunately, I get to go into the local schools in the 5 counties we cover. We are also a mountainous rural area.
Mhm.
Second, Deanne, peer supports are just as important as natural supports for our consumers.
Mm,
Mhm.
wonderful comments. So what do people think are the most surprising element of peer support programs?
Well, let me chat while
Sure.
people are putting their thoughts together, hopefully in the chat or the Q&A. That I think the most surprising is when people are introduced to it, they use it beautifully. I still say the barrier is knowing about it, recognizing it as the powerful tool that it is. And once people have had that opportunity, how wonderfully useful it is to empower all of us, one at a time and as groups, to get on and live the life that we want to live.
You know, and I will add that I think one of the most surprising elements is that it helps to bring people into independent living, like
Mhm.
myself. First being recruited as a peer support mentor, and then finding my way to working at an independent living center, or
Mhm.
being involved in my state independent living council or on the board of independent living center. So a lot of different ways to serve IL, not just at the center itself, but as boards and with our state independent living councils. So glad to see that we had so many that were on today as well. Other thoughts from people, some surprising elements of peer support programs?
We
don't
have
know how-
Joel. that
Okay,
has
good.
his hand up.
Yeah, hi, this is Joelle with Wyoming Independent Living. And I think one of the most surprising elements about kind of redoing our peer support programs and groups was just finding out how really quality conversation comes about when people are doing anything from art or adaptive painting, or we have adaptive cooking classes, things like that. Just a natural conversation that comes about people in peer support has been a really great aspect to our programs.
Thank you, Joelle. Yes. As I say, it happens all over the place, doesn't it? This peer
Yeah.
support, whether it's labeled that or not.
Right. Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, I look at the event that we do with our Fishing Has No Boundaries, and you know, the number of individuals with disabilities that come on a yearly basis, and just the friendships and networks that they made, and the peer support that goes on at those activities. And other ones we do around advocacy and other stuff like that. Those are a lot of those natural events that we do in independent living are also peer support events as well, whether we recognize that or see that as well.
I don't know how surprising this is, but it certainly was powerful for me. So early on in our developing peer support training, we did some evaluations of different types of training and different situations. And there was this particular gentleman who had lost his sight through an industrial accident, and he came to a peer support training, and he put into words perhaps what other people have felt. And he had said something, and it wasn't exactly like this, but something along the lines of, I really thought I had nothing to offer the world anymore. And now I know that I have plenty to offer the world. And that was obviously very touching to hear somebody make that powerful revelation. And we know that's true of other people who participate in peer support. This is this wonderful mutual beneficial aspect of peer support. It's not about one person giving and one person receiving, but it's more like Kyle was saying, a partnership where people share different aspects of their experiences that might be useful to the other person.
So on to our last question. What do you want everyone to know about peer support programs? So what would be the way, what do we want everybody out there who doesn't know about independent living, and we want to educate them, what do we want them to know about peer support? Feel free to throw your comments in the chat on that one. I would love to hear it. I have my own thoughts, of course, but I'd love to hear from everybody else on what do you think? If you had a chance, what do you want people to know about peer support? You're trying to sell it to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's your chance to be a salesman. You want to sell peer support. What do you want to say to people?
Help other people too in the process of developing their peer support.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'll be honest, it was that I had something to give. I mean, you know, the person that I had met with, the one, well, Rich, who at the time was a resource counselor, I mean, just hearing it from him saying, Kyle, you have so much to give. It's like, look at, you've done this, you're independent, you're going to college, you're doing this. You have so much experience, you know, lived experience that you can share with other people. And nobody had ever said that to me before, you know, that I got something that I can give back. So that was really important to me. That's what I want other people to know, is that individuals with disabilities have something they can give back. They have that lived experience.
That's not available anywhere else, I'd like to add. You have, yes, we can have professionals and families and family members in our life, and we appreciate the assistance that they might provide, but that's not the same as peer support. And of course,
No, I was just going to say, Lynn, and it comes free of charge too.
That's
No,
right.
I don't know
It's a
any, I don't know
bargain.
any centers that charge for peer support. So like all of our other platforms out there, this one's free of charge. Your ability to get out there and meet with and talk with other individuals with disabilities that have the same lived experience.
It's another IL bargain.
Yes, great way of saying it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We have a
Anybody else want
com-
to add anything? Oh, please go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay. We have a comment from Mary Worthington. Building confidence and social skills.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ratona? I
Renata.
believe- Okay. That it is definitely needed now more than ever and could make such a difference for persons with disability.
Here, here. Thank you, Renata.
With disability and the way they view their quality of life.
Oh, here,
Oh,
here.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, and as we know, some of the experiences that people are sharing have been tough ones. And it's great that those experiences can be used not just by the person who experienced them firsthand, but the people who are also sharing that information, receiving that information. One of my favorite phrases I like to use regarding peer support is that peer support expands opportunities and explores alternatives. So many people that we meet feel like they might be stuck. They're not going anywhere. They haven't, the Ed Roberts independent living is the idea that everybody has a future. Well, we know sometimes there are people who don't feel like they have a future. And the capacity for peer support to expand opportunities and explore alternatives have been, I think that's it. That's what we do. We help people get unstuck and get on with what they want to do in their lives.
So should we move on to our wrap up on volunteers? Do we have any more comments?
Linda and Kyle, I did just put this in the chat. This is Abby. But there was a question from our first session today that you said we could come back to this
Oh, yeah,
afternoon.
yes.
Sure.
In a peer support group setting, how would you handle a participant who changes the topic of conversation to religion and wants to share his or her faith as well as pray for the group out loud?
I have always come across in that situations and I try to explain to the person, it's like, look, I understand and I respect your religious beliefs, but at the same time, you need to respect other people's religious beliefs and as well. So people might not be as comfortable with that. So I would ask you to please withhold from doing that. So that is generally how I would approach it with the individual. I mean, let them know I'm being respectful of their beliefs, but at the same time, they need to be respectful of others as well.
Okay, we have another in the chat, Karen Ritchie. I would want people to know that what each person has to say is important, just as who they are is important.
Mm,
Well said.
nicely put. Thank you. Yes. I would just like to add something with regards to the question from the first session, and that is why it's a good idea to have guidelines for peer support, whether it be individualized or in a group, and certainly in a group that is repeated at each group to remind people about how they can respect one another. And that might include, depending on the group members can decide what they would like to have in that guideline. And that might include something about the sharing of religious or faith personal experiences or along those lines. Yeah.
And I ask people, yeah.
Putting
I
in the
ask people-
guidelines beforehand. That's what I was trying to say. Yes, sorry.
No, thank you, Linda. I was gonna say, I do the same thing with politics as well. You know, when we talk about politics and religion, I ask people to do the same thing. If you have strong political beliefs, please keep those to yourself because, you know, your beliefs might be contrary to what, you know, the person, you know, in your peer group relationship with, and you're not here to discuss politics. So
And that's how where good peer support training can be useful. So if you're facilitating or providing peer support, that you've have some ways of dealing with boundaries and those kinds of things before you've even started to get into that tricky situation. Yeah, I hope that's useful. Mhm.
Okay, we have 2 comments. Agree, the guidelines set in an, it jumped up on me, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Another person. Okay, agree guidelines set in advance of the religion and politics comes up. That's from Deanne Hart. And we have Bobby Creighton. Yes, Kyle. And then we have Vicky. Everyone has something to give, and getting out of oneself and working with others gives us purpose, joy, and seeing the bigger picture of life. And we see what's working together with others like-minded.
Appreciate
People
that.
can
Nicely put.
accomplish.
Mhm.
People can accomplish. One of my favorite quotes is, unless someone likes you, and unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Dr. Seuss.
Mhm.
Oh, I've not heard Dr. Seuss quoted that much. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So on to volunteers and volunteer programs.
Yeah.
First question, what makes volunteers worthwhile? I would like to say something while people are thinking. One of the things that people say, I say too much, but I do say it a lot then, is there are far too many people with disabilities sitting at home watching TV. And so peer support, volunteer programs, they're one of the many ways, or two of the many ways, should I say, that we can change the energy around that people are not just sitting at home watching TV, but are participating in the world as fully as they wish to.
Yes. Thank you, Linda. Allowing people to connect.
And see the
I
big
mean,
picture that the
yeah.
other quote just said, seeing the bigger picture, beyond your own personal situation. Yeah.
We
I
have
mean,
another one.
for our center, I mean, it's not only, I mean, our volunteers are the backbone of our driver program as well. But I mean, the volunteers, they get so much out of it as well. They really do. And so it's really great to see that not only are they providing us with such a great service, but that they're really getting something out of it for themselves as well personally.
Yeah, I mean, my mum and dad taught me the more you put into something, the more you get out of it. So that's true of volunteer programs and peer support. You
Yeah.
put some energy into it, you're going to get twice as much back out. Yeah. So do we have any thoughts on what makes volunteering worthwhile? Or maybe the next question, what's the largest barrier when using volunteers? Anybody would like to share their thoughts on that? Your thoughts would be most welcome.
Yeah. I know a lot of people have pointed out before, and I'm glad it was brought up, with the insurance issue when it comes to using volunteers. Your center makes sure, I mean, many times I'm sure that you will have an umbrella policy. Many times, I'm sure you have policies that cover your board as well. But yes, we have our umbrella policy here at SILWW that covers not only our volunteers that we use, but also within our drivers as well. Other ones, do we have?
We have,
Great.
We
so-
have some comments. Okay. I'm going to start with Caitlin. We don't always have follow through with consumers using our services. So it makes it difficult to promise a volunteer that they'll have consumers following through to keep the volunteer active. And
Mm,
then we have another one, community outreach and the through lack of someone to direct and manage the volunteer. And then on the comment prior to what you're discussing, Bob was saying in recognition of World Mental Health Day.
Mhm.
But he had a statement prior to that. It was, now more than ever is the time for connection, kindness, and action. We are all in this together and together. Number, we heal us. Mental health awareness, be kind, number, connect world. And that's all connected to the World Mental Health Day.
Which it is today. Yes, thank you. Mhm.
Kaylin, I saw that you just put something in the chat, and I saw that you had also had your hand up. If you're interested, would you like to speak out? If not, that's fine. All right,
I can read.
there we
In
go.
our job teaching transition students,
Nope.
oh, I'm sorry. Caitlin's on. Okay, great.
I was just gonna say kind of similar along the lines to what I said in the chat is, you know, with us teaching transition age students, having volunteers is kind of a struggle sometimes because we have to make sure they're cleared for being entered the schools, you know, that they have familiarity working with kids, especially kids with disabilities. You know, some people might be a good teacher, but might not be a very good teacher of students with disabilities. And so we have to make sure that they're able to do it and they're comfortable with doing it, because some people are a little less comfortable in situations in a more moderate class, or if something's going on. Like they might not know how to handle an upset student.
Yes, so I can see that, Kaylin, that
Yes, ma'am.
schools add another layer of complexity to the process,
Yes.
does it not?
Kind
Yeah.
of like how the insurance is for drivers. It's
Yeah.
kind of the same way. Like they got to have a clear background check. They can't have anything going on, you know.
Right.
But something I was going to say about volunteers in general and our peer supporters, like we love having them come to class. Like our peer supporters, you probably met a few of them, Miss Linda, because I think you do our peer support classes at Walton Options. But we, you know, I love having them come to class with us because, you know, even though I am the TA or the one that's running the class, I will absolutely hand it off to a peer supporter if they want to talk about bullying or if they want to talk about a certain subject that they're more familiar with than I am. I love giving them that opportunity to use their voice and be able to speak up, because sometimes it means I see the kids' faces light up when they see them get to talk about all these amazing things. And it's really an awesome thing to have them with us. And I'm so thankful for them.
That's great. Thank you, Kaylani. Yes. Well, people know when you're speaking with some authenticity. They understand if you really have experienced this or you're just talking. It's a
Right,
different.
absolutely.
Yeah, and Kaylin, you brought up one of the things is having too many hoops to jump through, kind of speak. We had a jail to community reentry program, and part of our things was mentoring. Our mentors would go into the jail to meet with people. Well, let me tell you, the hoops that they had to jump through and everything they had to go through just to get into the jail, they was a turnoff to them. They're like, it's just the paperwork and everything else, and the treatment is, I really love to volunteer, but just not with this program. So, yeah. And it was, we tried to smooth things out with the jail, but they had their procedures and they weren't going to change.
Right. And that's kind of how it is with the school district as well. Like they're not willing to budge. They got to have a background check. That's something we can't pass up.
Yeah.
So I see our time is running short. I wanted to ask the question, what are some ways you could use volunteers at your center? So we've been talking about volunteers today. And have people had a chance to think, what are some of the ways that we could use volunteers that we haven't? One of the things that I've always impressed me when I was working with Stepping Stones, one of the resources I included earlier is a program that has a food pantry and as a homeless shelter as well as, they said that once people come in and start volunteering, they get hooked because they just love to volunteer. So, you know, if we could hook people and get them volunteering, if we got some great programs. I talked about how much our drivers enjoy volunteering. But what are some of the things that we could use volunteers for at our centers?
If you're thinking about IL and peer support, volunteers would be very good to organize volunteers, would they not? In our way of thinking. Not that that would exclude, obviously, staff efforts too, but it's a thought.
Mm.
We have one. We have used retired veterans to help build ramps for consumers before.
Mm.
Mm.
I love volunteers, but sometimes it is a long process to get them able to be volunteered.
Mm.
I like that. Thinking about home
Sure.
modifications. Yes, we've used volunteers many times for that. You're right. Yeah. And yes,
I hate to say it, you know, one of the things that we had reached out to was we have the Chippewa Valley Builders, which serves a number of builders in our area. So they were doing some ramps and stuff for us, but one of the things they wanted was to be able to advertise that they do that they help people out in the community. It's like, you go ahead, you advertise all you want, as long as we get the free ramps, I'm okay with that. Yeah, but yeah, they don't do that as much anymore, so I'm sorry to say. But if there are people that are out there volunteering, like I said, recognition goes a long way.
well, and for that example you just said before, Kyle, recognizing the mutual benefit in relationships that work. If that organization, that building company needs to use that for their advertising, so be it, as long as it's working benefit for IL on the other end. Yeah. Win-win, as they say.
Yes. You know, along with, I suppose, the ways you could use volunteers, but goes with our last question, what are some volunteer programs you can develop throughout there? What are some programs you currently don't have, but there's a need for? Similar with what we did with transportation, we knew there was a need for the transportation, and our solution was using the volunteer drivers. It took a long time to develop it, but you know, what are some programs out there that you could use volunteers for that aren't existing today besides peer support?
How long did your volunteer driver program take to develop? Can you answer that question off the top of your head, or is it too complicated?
It's been about 20 years now going strong, but yeah, it took us to where we were providing services even in our 10 counties was probably about 6 years. So it 5 years, it took a while to grow from a few drivers, you know. A lot of work, like I said, goes into recruitment. Figure that staff time going into it. So, but the payoff, I mean, Linda, you talked before about not just looking at the staff time involved, but the payoff that comes from that.
Yeah. Seeing the bigger benefit. Yeah. So any thoughts about volunteer programs you'd like to develop or are developing? Any thoughts about volunteers in general? Any comments on anything that we've spoken about so far? Anything you'd like people to know? I have to say, I really, really appreciated the thoughtfulness and the quality of the comments and questions that you've shared. I think it's really been beneficial to the rest of us, and I appreciate you taking the time and energy to do it. So we had something like 100 people at the first two sessions and slightly less than that at this wrap-up session. That's a lot of your time and energy you're sharing with us, and it's really very much appreciated, because this is how peer support works.
Absolutely. Thank you. That well said, Linda. You know, we always talk about peer support, but peer support happens so much. I loved going to Nick. I'll say as much as we're doing virtual, I did love going to the Nickel in person out in DC, just because you have such an opportunity to just to network and mentor with people kind of after hours sort of thing. So I love just the peer support that goes on in independent living.
Yeah.
Yes, and there are emojis, there are clapping hands, there are hearts, and there were, yes, clapping hands, hearts, thumbs up.
Well,
So,
that's terrific.
yes, thank you, everyone. We have just a few minutes, about 7 minutes to go. I'd just like to remind everybody to, if you haven't done your evaluation for 1, 2, or 3 session, when this webinar closes, let us know how we can continue to improve and keep improving training that you find most useful. Thank you all for joining us. And don't forget, if you are registered for the youth conference, to join at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight. We hope all will be able to join us tomorrow for our welcoming at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Do you have any closing remarks, Linda or Kyle, for us?
No, I just want to again thank everyone. It's been an enjoyable day. I just love the comments from people around peer support and the volunteers. It's been a wonderful opportunity to just share with one another what we're doing.
Absolutely. And I have to say thank you to April for being so competent at making this all happen and getting people together so that we can share and provide peer support to each other, and hopefully just enjoy some company and the feeling of support that gives us as we go about our work, which, let's be honest, can be very tricky at times. We need to be supportive of one another as we do the important things we do. So thank you to April and everybody there, and thank you to everybody who's participated. It's been a real honor and a treat, a real honor. Thank you so much.
Yes, I second that, Linda, and thank you to our interpreters as well. The April staff has been wonderful at coordinating everything today. Couldn't have gone better.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yes. Thank you
Thank
both
you,
so
Beth.
much.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you both so much on behalf of April. Kyle, you mentioned something about being in person at Nickel, about, those after hours conversations. We are really hoping to try to facilitate that the best we can, even though we're in a virtual space.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put a link in the chat to, we have set up an April Discord. If you're unfamiliar, Discord is a web messaging platform that allows for text chatting, voice chatting, and video chatting. We have set it up for our conference. There are threads for each day and for each session. So please feel free to join. It's free to join. All you need is a Discord account, which just will link to your email address. And myself and one of our board members, Mel's Felton, will be there to help you get oriented to the platform. But we'd be so happy to have you. And we're hoping that we can really continue these conversations about each of our sessions and about IL in general in that space.
Excellent. I'd
Thank
forgotten
you,
about
Abby.
that. Thank you for the
That was
reminder.
great.
Yeah.
I
And
was
thanks
still,
to the captioners,
yeah,
Bonnie and
Yes.
Samantha.
Definitely.
definitely.
As a reminder, if you are registered for the youth conference, I know Beth already called it out. Our youth keynote speaker this evening is YouTubers and advocates Squirmy and Grubs. So we're very excited to have them join us. So if you are registered for youth conference, we will see you in about 2 hours for that.
Yes, I hope everybody has fun with the rest of the April conference and all the good things you've organized for us. Well done, and thank you.
Yes.
All right. Linda and Kyle, if there's any information you need us to share after this, please feel free to send it April's way and we can post it on the conference website as well.
Will do. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Abby.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a
Take
great
good care, be
evening.
well.
And we'll see you tomorrow or tonight at youth conference.
Yeah,
Bye.
happy peer supporting.